The red warning light on Jack Miller's desk began flashing, interrupting the quiet start to his morning. Jack had just settled in with a cup of coffee, expecting to review data from Research Station 47's recent scans. But the pulsing red glow quickly pulled his attention to the holographic display. With a sigh, he leaned in to check it, assuming it would be another false alarm triggered by the overly sensitive perimeter sensors. Yet, as he scanned the readings, his eyes widened in disbelief. This was no false alarm. Something large and unexpected had breached the outer fence of the station. And, according to the readings, it was bleeding. "Computer, show me the security feed," Jack commanded, setting down his cup and straightening up in his seat. The screen flickered to life, revealing the snowy landscape surrounding the isolated research station. At first, all Jack could see was the usual endless stretch of white, marked by towering cliffs in the distance and snow-heavy clouds. Then he noticed something unusual. A trail of dark, irregular drops staining the pristine snow, leading from the breached perimeter toward the station's storage units. The creature had left a clear path in the otherwise undisturbed snow, each dark spot contrasting sharply with the pale ground. Warning: DNA analysis indicates presence of Class A predator species. Station protocol requires immediate lockdown and orbital defense activation, the computer's neutral voice announced, filling the room with an urgency that made Jack's pulse quicken. The machine sounded impassive, but Jack understood the implications. A class of predator was no small threat. These creatures were apex predators on their homeworlds, known for both lethal capabilities and remarkable resilience. He leaned in closer, watching as the security feed focused on the shape moving between the storage containers. Even from this distance, he could tell it was enormous, nearly as tall as a man, but with a streamlined, powerful build. Jack's background as a xenobiologist told him that he was looking at a specimen of formidable strength and deadly grace. Covered in stormy gray scales that shifted like living shadows, the creature had 6 limbs, each ending in retractable claws. But what caught Jack's attention most was its injury, the way it limped, gingerly keeping weight off one leg. It wasn't just powerful. It was aware, cautious, and clearly hurting. "Override lockdown," Jack ordered, already reaching for his medical kit and strapping on his cold weather gear. Warning: species matches genetic profile of Shadowclaw, a Class A predator known for destroying 3 colonial outposts. Highly dangerous. Override not recommended, the computer replied with what almost sounded like reluctance. Noted, but Jack wasn't about to leave an injured creature, especially a fascinating one like this, outside to suffer. He checked the tranquilizer gun at his belt out of habit, but he had no real intention of using it unless he had to. The creature was hurt, not aggressive. And besides, this was his chance. Encounters with Shadowclaws rarely ended well for the observer, which meant detailed studies were non-existent. He wasn't about to miss this opportunity. With his medical kit secured and his heartbeat steady, Jack headed toward the airlock, feeling equal parts excitement and trepidation. His 15 years as a xenobiologist had led him to encounter numerous alien life forms, some dangerous, others benign. But none of those encounters came close to this. Shadowclaws were legends even among seasoned explorers. Most who met them didn't live to tell the tale. But the bleeding trail outside suggested vulnerability, perhaps even a glimmer of trust if he could approach it carefully. As Jack stepped outside, the icy air hit him like a wall, making him glad for the thick layers of his winter gear. He tightened his grip on his medical kit and followed the creature's blood trail, the dark purple droplets stark against the snow, leading him to the Shadowclaw's current location. He moved deliberately, careful not to make sudden movements. He knew well that fast motions could trigger a predator's instinct, but slow, cautious gestures often communicated non-hostility. Rounding the corner, he finally saw it, cornered between 2 storage units, its massive, sleek body heaving slightly. Up close, the Shadowclaw was even more imposing, almost 4 meters in length, its limbs bulging with muscle beneath its rough, silvery gray scales. Its head bore a striking resemblance to Earth's extinct raptors, but with a deep intelligence in its metallic eyes that went beyond anything Jack had encountered in animal behavior. The creature was still, but its gaze was piercing, every muscle coiled in a tension that could explode in an instant. It held its injured limb carefully off the ground, purple blood seeping slowly from a wound on its thigh. "Hey there," Jack said in a soft, steady voice, careful to keep his tone gentle and unthreatening. "That looks pretty painful. I can help if you'll let me." The creature tilted its head, almost as if it were considering his words. Jack knew it couldn't understand English, but tone and body language could often transcend species. He slowly opened his medical kit, keeping his movements deliberate, letting the creature see everything he was doing. "Computer," he whispered into his communicator, "record everything. This is remarkable. Is showing clear signs of evaluating my intentions. This behavior isn't typical of a simple predator." As if in response to his observation, the shadow claw shifted slightly, turning its injured leg a little closer to him. Jack took another cautious step forward, his medical scanner at the ready. The creature's eyes tracked his movements, not with hostility but with an intense, curious scrutiny. When he aimed the scanner at its leg, it let out a low growl, not a warning, more a cautious acknowledgement. "It's all right," Jack reassured, moving closer. "I just want to see how bad the wound is." The scanner's display filled with data, confirming a deep gash, likely from a sharp object. But then he noticed something unexpected. The creature's neural patterns were more complex than any predator he'd seen. In fact, they resembled those of a sapient species. "Computer," Jack murmured, barely containing his excitement, "are you seeing these readings? The neural activity. This isn't just a predator. This might be a sapient being. The stories about them destroying colonies. I think we've misunderstood them entirely." Almost as if it understood his revelation, the shadow claw shifted its stance again, exposing the wound more clearly. The creature, injured and cornered, seemed to be making a choice, to trust Jack. Jack knelt down in the snow, fully aware of the gravity of the moment. "Well," he said softly, "looks like this is how first contact really happens. Not in grand meetings with diplomats, but in moments of vulnerability and choice." For the next 3 days, Jack treated the creature's wound in a makeshift medical bay, breaking countless protocols in his effort to understand his remarkable patient. Over time, the shadow claw's guarded posture softened. As Jack carefully monitored its recovery, he marveled at the intelligence shining in its gaze, a silent gratitude and understanding that bridged the gap between their species. He knew that this encounter would change everything they thought they knew about shadow claws, and perhaps even more about the boundaries between species. Jack Miller's morning had settled into a quiet rhythm, until the urgent flash of a red warning light disrupted everything. His eyes shifted from the coffee in his hands to the holographic display on his desk, which showed a blinking red notification for a priority communication. The stark red alert cast an ominous glow over his workstation. He knew exactly what the call was about. His unorthodox decision to shelter a Class A predator inside Research Station 47's walls was bound to draw attention from higher-ups eventually. With a sigh, he set his coffee aside and accepted the call, steeling himself for the reprimand that was surely coming. Director Wells's stern face appeared on the screen. "Miller, have you lost your mind?" he snapped, his tone clipped and irate. "You're harboring a Class A predator inside a research station. You know the protocols for handling a species like that." Jack straightened, meeting the director's glare. "Director, please hear me out. This isn't what it seems." He quickly adjusted the display, transmitting the neural scan data he had collected on the creature over the past few days. "This shadow claw, it's not just an animal. I've named it Storm after its storm gray scales, and it's exhibiting signs of intelligence. Look at the readings, Director." The director's eyes flickered to the data, but he seemed unfazed. "I don't care about your readings, Miller. That creature has killed hundreds of colonists. I'm ordering you to terminate it immediately." Storm's head lifted at the director's sharp tone, and to Jack's surprise, it emitted a soft clicking noise, almost as if it were trying to comfort him. Jack glanced at the creature, feeling a strange camaraderie and a surge of determination. "Sir, with all respect," he said, his voice firm, "I won't do that. Storm is not what we thought. It's been showing signs of awareness, maybe even communication. Communication? Wells scoffed, crossing his arms. Yes, sir. Just watch this. Jack turned to Storm and held his hand out, palm up, a gesture they had been practicing together. Storm looked at him and then raised its front leg, mirroring his pose perfectly. But this time, without any instruction, Storm added a new motion, touching its chest with its other leg in what seemed like a display of understanding. Did you see that? Jack said, his excitement spilling over. Storm isn't just mimicking me anymore. It's creating its own gestures. This is two-way communication. Miller, this is your final warning, Wells began. But his words trailed off as Storm moved again. The creature carefully reached out, picking up one of the medical tools on the table with its claws and placing it precisely back where it belonged. Its silver eyes fixed directly on the screen, meeting the director's stunned gaze. That's tool use, Wells stammered, his anger shifting to confusion. The reports said they were just animals. The reports were wrong, Jack said, a note of conviction in his voice. They're intelligent, Director. Maybe as intelligent as we are. They just live differently. As if to drive the point home, Storm made a series of fluid gestures, then tapped the screen where Wells's face appeared, as if signaling its awareness that they were discussing it. Jack turned back to the director, his tone calmer but insistent. I need more time, sir. Just 2 weeks. Let me prove what I'm saying. If I'm wrong, he took a deep breath, steadying himself. If I'm wrong, I'll follow protocol. But I don't think I am. Wells was silent for a long moment, studying Storm's quiet, vigilant form beside Jack. The creature seemed to hover protectively near him, its posture relaxed but watchful. 5 days, Miller, he said at last, his voice softened. You have 5 days to show me definitive proof of intelligence. After that, we do this by the book. The screen went dark, leaving Jack feeling both exhilarated and exhausted. Storm made a soft, trilling sound, nudging Jack's hand gently with its nose, as if sensing his emotions. Jack managed a tired smile. Thanks, Storm. I guess we've got our work cut out for us. The Shadow Claw's response was surprising. It walked over to the medical supply shelf and began arranging the items by size and color, creating an organized pattern. When it was done, Storm looked at Jack expectantly, as if to ask for approval. Jack chuckled, shaking his head in disbelief. You've been holding out on me, haven't you? You understand a lot more than you've been showing. Storm's silver eyes sparkled with intelligence, and it made a gesture Jack hadn't seen before, touching its head, then Jack's, and finally bringing its claws together in what looked like a linking motion. Suddenly, Jack felt a strange tingling in his mind, a faint but unmistakable sensation like the edge of a thought that wasn't his own. His eyes widened, understanding what Storm was trying to communicate. Well, my friend, he whispered, awe in his voice, I guess we're about to break a few more barriers here. Show me what you've got. As the day turned to dusk, Jack and Storm began learning an entirely new form of communication. A language built on mutual curiosity, trust, and the remarkable bridge between their two minds. Jack sat cross-legged on the floor of the makeshift medical bay, his head swimming with sensations and images that weren't his own. Across from him, Storm was also seated, its massive body resting still as its silver eyes studied Jack's face with almost human concentration. This is incredible, Jack murmured as a vivid image formed in his mind. He saw endless forests under purple skies, gatherings of shadow claws moving in perfect, coordinated harmony. Young shadow claws learned to hunt and survive through complex team dynamics, their movements graceful and precise, as if each had a role in a greater pattern. Each vision seemed to reveal a depth of culture and community that Jack had never expected. The computer's voice interrupted them. Warning. Unusual brain activity detected in human subject. I'm fine, Jack replied, waving off the machine's concerns. Storm's just showing me its world. Are you recording this, computer? Affirmative. Neural patterns suggest a form of targeted telepathy, previously unknown capability in Shadowclaw species. Jack heard a soft clicking sound that he recognized as Storm's laughter. More images and impressions filled his mind, this time revealing why Storm had been near the station in the first place. It hadn't wandered here by accident. It had been on a journey, searching for something specific. Jack focused, allowing the images to unfold further, feeling as if he were tapping into something ancient and profound. Storm had been on a quest to find new territories, to ensure survival for its kin. With each passing hour, Jack and Storm shared more complex thoughts and emotions. Storm's knowledge wasn't just instinctual. It was learned, nuanced, and vast. Jack could feel the creature's patience and curiosity mirroring his own as they explored this uncharted territory together. By nightfall, Jack was drained but deeply moved. He looked at Storm, marveling at how much had changed in such a short time. "We're going to make history, Storm," he said softly. The Shadow Claw tilted its head, watching him with an intense, intelligent gaze, as if it understood not only the words but the meaning behind them. As he settled in to rest, Jack realized they were well on their way to proving that the galaxy was far more connected, and its species more alike, than anyone had ever dared to imagine. Jack Miller marveled as the latest set of images streamed through his mind. They were visions, memories really, from Storm's people, the Shadow Claws. The images depicted what they called the Path of Knowing, a journey young Shadow Claws took as a rite of passage into adulthood. Jack was awestruck by the sophistication of their culture. "You're like a teenager on a vision quest," he murmured to Storm, unable to contain his fascination. "Your people aren't primitive at all. They've just chosen a different path than ours." Storm's response was vivid, displaying even more ancient memories. He saw colossal, decaying structures hidden beneath the sprawling, shadowed canopies of their forests. They were remnants of a forgotten age when Shadow Claws had once built towering cities and powerful starships. Storm's ancestors had looked to the stars, just as humanity had, searching for progress and understanding. But they discovered something else, how technology and expansion could divide rather than unite. It disrupted their bond with one another and with their planet. In the end, the Shadow Claws had made a profound choice. They would abandon these advancements and pursue a life that honored their connection to each other and the natural world. Storm's images shifted, darkening, as they conveyed painful memories of humanity's presence on the Shadow Claws' sacred grounds. Jack now understood the tragedies behind their conflicts. The colonies his people had established were unknowingly built upon ancient gathering sites where Shadow Claws met to share their wisdom, meditate, and connect with each other. Jack felt a pang of guilt as he realized that the Shadow Claws hadn't been merely attacking in blind fury. They had been defending places that held deep, sacred meaning. "They were building on your sacred sites, weren't they?" he whispered, piecing it together. "That's why the colonies were attacked." Storm's answer came as a wave of sadness. Jack saw images of Shadow Claws trying to communicate with the human settlers, attempting to convey the importance of the sites through gestures and symbolic actions. But instead of understanding, humans had met them with fear, and fear had quickly turned to violence. Jack found himself asking the question that had lingered in the back of his mind since his first encounter with Storm. "But why are you showing me all this? Why me?" A flood of impressions poured in. Through the haze of images, Jack understood that Storm had watched him for days before being injured, observing his interactions with the station's environment from the safety of the shadows. Storm had seen how Jack treated the plants and animals around him with care and respect, speaking gently even to inanimate objects, as though each had its own place and purpose. To Storm, this respectfulness and empathy marked Jack as someone worthy of trust. In that moment, Jack felt both honored and humbled. Just then, an alarm cut harshly through the quiet, severing their mental link. The computer's voice was urgent and emotionless. "Warning. Multiple vehicles approaching the station. Military signatures detected." Jack shot to his feet, his mind racing. "What? They can't be here already. Director Wells promised me 5 days." Through their re-established connection, Storm sent him waves of calm and reassurance. Jack felt his anxiety ease, though Storm's own emotions were clear. The Shadow Claw wasn't afraid. Instead, Jack sensed determination, a feeling of resolve that bordered on excitement. Along with the feeling, Storm conveyed a series of mental images that formed into something resembling a plan. You want to show them, Jack realized, all of them at once. Storm nodded and moved to the center of the room, his scales beginning to shimmer with patterns that Jack had never seen before. The mental connection between them intensified, growing stronger and more vivid as Storm prepared to expand his reach. "They're here," the computer intoned. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors outside as the military team stormed in. The door burst open, and a group of armed soldiers rushed in, weapons raised and expressions tense. Behind them, Director Wells forced his way through, his face flushed with anger. "Miller, step away from that creature immediately." But Jack remained beside Storm, meeting Wells's furious gaze with calm determination. "Actually, sir, Storm has something to show all of you." Before anyone could react, Storm extended his mental link, and Jack felt it wash over the room like a wave. The soldiers froze, expressions shifting from anger to bewilderment, as their minds were flooded with the same images that Jack had witnessed. They saw the Shadowclaw's culture, the decision to live harmoniously with nature, the richness of their communal life, and their sacred sites. The heavy-handed human assumption that the Shadowclaws were nothing more than violent animals melted away in the face of such undeniable depth and beauty. Slowly, the soldiers lowered their weapons, their faces filled with wonder and awe. Even Director Wells was stunned, taking an unsteady step back as he struggled to process what he was experiencing. "Impossible," he whispered. "All this time we never knew. We never tried to know," Jack replied softly. "We assumed they were less than us because they lived differently. But Storm's people have been watching us, waiting for someone willing to understand. They're not lesser beings for choosing a different path. They may even be wiser than we are." In response, Storm shared a powerful wave of pride. Pride in Jack and in the newfound understanding forming between their species. In that small research station on the far edge of human space, something profound had changed. Barriers that had separated their peoples for centuries were now breaking down, one mind at a time, as humanity and Shadowclaw took their first steps toward a shared future. Word of the encounter spread quickly through the galaxy, faster than Jack could have anticipated. Within a week, every major species in the galaxy was abuzz with the story of the human who had befriended a Shadowclaw. The communication system at Station 47 was overwhelmed with messages from ambassadors, scientists, and curious beings of all kinds, eager to learn more about this unprecedented alliance. Another urgent call from the Galactic Council, the computer announced one morning as Jack was checking on Storm, who had made a full recovery. "It's the Marian ambassador. This is their 5th attempt today." Storm's silver eyes gleamed with amusement, and through their mental link, Jack felt a spark of playful enjoyment at the chaos they had inadvertently caused. But beneath that amusement was a deeper sense of anticipation. "What is it?" Jack asked, noticing the way Storm seemed particularly energized. "You've been excited about something all morning." Storm didn't respond with images, but instead walked to the window and gazed out at the snowy landscape beyond the station. Jack followed his gaze and gasped as he saw 3 more Shadowclaws standing at the edge of the station's perimeter. "Computer, don't sound any alarms," Jack said quickly. "They're not a threat." Through their connection, Storm explained that these Shadowclaws were members of his pack, drawn by the stories he had mentally shared with them. They were curious about the human who had broken the barriers between their species. Director Wells, who had decided to stay at the station to oversee the situation, burst into the room, his expression a mixture of awe and panic. "Miller, are you seeing this? More Shadowclaws." "It's okay," Jack assured him. "Storm invited them. They want to learn about us, just as we want to learn about them." Wells rubbed his hands over his face, a look of disbelief in his eyes. "The Galactic Council is in an uproar over this. Half of them want to send armies to protect us, and the other half wants to study the Shadowclaw's telepathic abilities. And everyone's asking how humans manage to do what no other species could." Through their mental link, Storm conveyed a gentle, approving touch, and with it came a sense of certainty, a promise that, despite the chaos, this was only the beginning. The memories Storm shared were profound, spanning ages and recounting encounters with countless species. For centuries, shadow claws had been approached by others, often with weapons drawn or intentions masked in words of capture or control. Rarely had any species encountered them without attempting to exploit or dissect their nature. Humans, however, were different. Jack was different. Jack had been the first to reach out with kindness, helping without asking for anything in return. Storm's memories showed Jack how the shadow claws had reacted with initial surprise, then trust, when they realized he wasn't there to control them but simply to help. Maybe that's why it worked, Jack reflected aloud, glancing at Storm. We didn't try to study or control you first, we just helped. Before Storm could respond, the station computer chimed in, breaking the moment with urgency. Multiple ships entering orbit, diplomatic vessels from 7 different species, the computer announced. Outside, Jack noticed that the 3 newly arrived shadow claws were moving closer. Their movements were graceful and slow, almost ceremonial, as they sent each other and Storm calming signals. They seemed to share memories of their time with Jack, as if readying themselves to meet the incoming visitors. Director Wells stepped into the room, his face marked with the lines of days spent navigating this situation with equal parts awe and skepticism. "Director," Jack said, a sudden idea flashing to life in his mind. "I think I have a way to approach this, but you're probably not going to like it." Wells sighed heavily, his posture tired but his expression guarded. "At this point, Miller, nothing you suggest could surprise me." Jack took a deep breath. "Let's invite everyone down, the diplomats, the scientists, the military leaders. All of them. But not here, not inside the station. Out there in the snow, where the shadow claws are waiting." He looked out the window, gesturing to the shadow claws gathered in the open field. "We'll let the shadow claws choose who can approach and on their own terms." Wells's eyes widened in disbelief. "You want to hold first contact negotiations in the snow?" Jack nodded. "The shadow claws believe in meeting on neutral ground, where nothing separates them from the sky. It's about equality and respect, no walls, no technology between them and the world. If we're serious about treating them as equals, then we need to meet them on their terms." Wells stared out the window at the shadow claws. More were emerging from the tree line, their scales rippling with color, expressions watchful but open, curious rather than hostile. It was a sight that would have been unimaginable just days ago. "So the galaxy's most feared predators are inviting us to peaceful contact," Wells mused, half to himself. "And it's all because you helped one of them. I can hardly believe it." Jack held his breath, watching Wells's expression shift from disbelief to reluctant acceptance. "Fine, Miller," Wells said, finally nodding. "Write up your proposal, and I'll send it to the Galactic Council. But understand, this won't be easy to control. If anything goes wrong—" "Understood, sir," Jack replied, giving a respectful nod. He felt Storm's approval through their mental link, a warm wave of support that bolstered Jack's confidence. Outside, the shadow claws gathered, their posture calm yet alert as they awaited the arrival of the diplomats. Jack watched as Storm placed a clawed hand on the window, pressing against the glass with a strangely human gesture. He felt the weight of what this moment meant, not just for him and Storm, but for an entire galaxy that had long misunderstood the shadow claws as nothing more than threats. "Look at that," Jack said quietly, almost to himself. "A week ago, everyone thought they were just animals. Now they're about to reshape galactic diplomacy." Storm sent him an image that filled Jack's mind with possibility. Stars, species, and minds of all kinds learning to understand one another. A vision of a galaxy where strength no longer had to inspire fear. The other shadow claws, sensing this vision, added their own feelings, weaving a tapestry of hope, possibility, and purpose in Jack's mind. It was a glimpse of a future they could all build together. The first ships began to land on the field, their engines quiet as they settled into the snow. Jack watched with anticipation and a hint of pride. This was bigger than just him and Storm now. This was the beginning of a bridge between worlds, built on a foundation of simple kindness in the snow. However, the peaceful scene quickly dissolved into chaos. A sleek, black research vessel from V Corporation, a powerful private corporation known for its aggressive approach to research and resources, broke the agreed-upon protocol. Instead of landing at a respectful distance, the V Corporation ship set down right at the edge of the Shadowclaw's gathering. Jack's stomach dropped as he saw the ship's hatch open, and armed researchers poured out, carrying stun weapons and capture nets. They moved with military precision, their eyes fixed on the Shadowclaws. "Stop!" Jack yelled, sprinting through the snow toward them. "You're going to ruin everything." But his voice was swallowed by the icy wind, and the researchers kept advancing. A mental warning from Storm hit Jack like a shockwave. The Shadowclaws weren't angry, they were frightened. Not for themselves but for their young, who had come to witness the meeting. Jack felt their protective instincts flare through their link, an urge to defend that simmered into rising tension. Jack snatched his communicator, heart pounding. "Computer, broadcast on all frequencies," he ordered. "All ships, maintain distance. The Shadowclaws are not hostile, but they will defend their young." Despite his efforts, the V Corporation researchers were too focused to hear him. They launched a net toward one of the smallest Shadowclaws in the group. The net crackled with electricity, designed to incapacitate even the strongest creature. Storm moved instantly, darting in front of the young Shadowclaw to shield it from the attack. The net wrapped around him instead, sending painful electric currents through his body. Jack felt the shock through their mental link, a lancing pain that took his breath away. "Shut down the nets!" Jack screamed, turning to the V Corporation team. But they were too excited by the apparent capture. Their faces lit with triumph as they moved closer, preparing to haul Storm onto their ship. The other Shadowclaws tensed, and Jack could feel their fear transforming into rage. Their protective instincts surged as they prepared to attack. In their eyes, this was a betrayal, a confirmation of every fear and doubt they had harbored about humans. Jack knew that if violence erupted now, it would reinforce every stereotype of the Shadowclaws as savage beasts and undo the trust they had painstakingly built. Desperate, Jack acted on a split-second decision. He ran to Storm, who was struggling against the electrified net, and, without hesitation, grabbed the net with his bare hands. The shock coursed through him, making him cry out in pain, but he held on, refusing to let go. His cry silenced everyone. The V Corporation researchers halted, the security teams stood frozen, and even the Shadowclaws paused, watching in shock and confusion. For a moment, time seemed to stop as Jack, still gripping the crackling net, spoke through gritted teeth. "If you want to hurt them," he said, his voice strained but clear, "you'll have to hurt me too." Storm trusted us, protected us, and shared his wisdom. And this, he gestured to the net wrapped around his own hands, his voice thick with pain. "This is how we repay them." Through the agony, Jack met Storm's silver eyes. Despite the pain, their mental link held firm, a lifeline of shared understanding that communicated what words couldn't. Together, they broadcast their feelings to everyone present, human and Shadowclaw alike. The pain of misunderstanding, the deep hope for something better, and a choice laid bare: fear or trust. A young researcher from the V Corporation team stepped forward, her weapon lowered. She looked at Jack with a dawning understanding, her face full of remorse. Slowly, the young Vex researcher deactivated the electrified net. Jack and Storm collapsed together in the snow, breathing hard but relieved. Around them, the other Shadowclaws approached cautiously, not to attack but to offer support. They formed a protective circle around Jack and Storm, their eyes watching the humans with newfound understanding. Then, something extraordinary happened. The Shadowclaws opened their mental link to everyone present. Thoughts and feelings flowed freely, bridging species and misunderstandings alike. The Vex researchers, initially here to capture, staggered as the overwhelming depth of the Shadowclaws' emotions and experiences flooded into their minds. They felt the Shadowclaws' vast wisdom, rooted not just in survival but in empathy and balance. They sensed the intense love the Shadowclaws had for their young and the hope they had held for peaceful contact. Members of the security team, their weapons now lowered, stood stunned as they understood the terrible mistake that had almost unfolded. Here were creatures of immense intelligence and compassion, ready to share, not harm. I understand now, murmured the lead Vex researcher, dropping her capture equipment in the snow. We wanted to study them so badly, we forgot they might teach us. Willingly, if we'd only asked. Storm got to his feet, nudging Jack gently to help him up. Through their link, Jack felt a mixture of pride and amused relief emanating from Storm. As if to say, we've turned a potential disaster into something meaningful. As Jack steadied himself, Director Wells walked over, shaking his head in amazement. Miller, Wells said, eyes widening with admiration. You're either the bravest or the craziest human I've ever met. Jack managed to smile, still leaning against Storm's solid presence. Neither, sir, he replied, glancing up at Storm. I just trusted my friend. Sometimes that's all it takes. The young Shadowclaw Storm had protected, a curious and brave one who had yet to be named, stepped forward, reaching out with its head and gently touching Jack's hand. A new mental link formed, carrying feelings of gratitude and curiosity from the young Shadowclaw, who had begun to understand the risk Jack took for them. As snow fell softly around them, humans and Shadowclaws shared an unprecedented moment of peace and understanding. They spoke without words, using only open minds and willing hearts. What had started as a crisis was now a chance to change history. In the days that followed, the story of the Shadowclaws and the human who had chosen trust over fear spread across the galaxy. The Galactic Council quickly called a special session, eager to learn from Jack and Storm about this remarkable species. For the first time, the Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been more united or more intrigued. Council members typically sat in a formal arrangement on raised platforms, towering over their speakers, a reminder of their perceived power. This time, however, they stood in a circle on the main floor, shoulder to shoulder. In the center, surrounded by an eager crowd of humans and Shadowclaws, Jack and Storm stood side by side. This is highly irregular, the council leader muttered, glancing around with a touch of anxiety as one of the larger Shadowclaws moved closer, inspecting his ceremonial robes with curiosity. Jack hid a smile. The Shadowclaws believe true understanding can't happen from above. We must all stand on the same ground if we're serious about learning from each other. In response, Storm extended his mental link, filling the council members' minds with a cascade of memories. The Shadowclaw's history unfolded like a living tapestry, a story of a people who had once reached the stars only to make the conscious decision to turn away from advanced technology. Their history was profound and complex, detailing a journey from technological mastery back to natural wisdom and balance. Impossible, one council member whispered, looking almost in awe. They had technology more advanced than ours, and they gave it up? Through Storm's memories, the reason became clear. They had once built cities and spaceships and spread across distant worlds. But with these achievements came division. Factions had formed, each with its own technologies and ambitions. The Shadowclaws had started to lose their ability to connect mentally, their defining trait, as technology took precedence over community. As a species that valued connection over all else, they found themselves at a crossroads. So they made the difficult choice to abandon their machines, their ships, and their cities. They stepped back into nature, choosing to preserve what they felt was most important: their unity, their shared wisdom, and their bond with the world. They chose this path, Jack explained, following Storm's guidance through their link, not because they couldn't advance further, but because they wanted to preserve something more essential: their connection to each other and to life itself. The young Shadowclaw that Jack had protected during the incident, now named Swift by Jack, stepped forward confidently. Through the group link, Swift shared memories of learning the essentials of Shadowclaw life: how to hunt, to think critically, and to connect with others. The Shadowclaws taught their young more than just survival. They taught them wisdom, empathy, and balance. It was a lesson in harmony that resonated with everyone who experienced it. One of the council members, who had previously been skeptical, spoke up. But what about the attacks on our colonies? We thought they were just being territorial. Storm shared the truth. The colonies in question had been built on sacred gathering places, sites where Shadowclaws from far-off lands would converge to share knowledge and strengthen their bonds. They had tried to communicate the importance of these spaces to the colonists, who, unable to understand the Shadow Claw's mental links, saw only threatening gestures from creatures they barely understood. Jack stepped forward, gesturing to the circle they had all formed. "This is why we're here, not to negotiate territory or resources, but to learn from each other. The Shadow Claws have much to teach us, not only about how they live, but why they've chosen this path. They have something profound to share with us about connection, balance, and the value of wisdom over unchecked progress." A scientist among the group raised her hand tentatively. "But surely they must see the benefits of our technology? We could offer them so much." Storm responded with a gentle mental touch, filling their minds with images of young Shadow Claws playing, learning, and growing into capable individuals. They did not need machines or gadgets to find happiness or success. Their strength came from their unity and their profound bond with life. Through Jack, Storm expressed that the Shadow Claws were not condemning technology. They simply valued different aspects of life. They were advanced in their own way, a way that focused on harmony with the world and each other. The council leader looked thoughtful, his skepticism giving way to something resembling understanding. "And what do they want from us?" he asked. The answer came, not from Storm alone, but from all the Shadow Claws in unison. They sent out a chorus of mental images depicting a future where different species learned together, where respect and understanding were the guiding principles. They wanted others to honor their way of life and to engage in shared wisdom with those willing to listen and learn. "They're offering us something incredible," Jack said, his voice reverent. "Not their old technology or their hunting skills, but their perspective on what truly matters, connection, balance, and growth that includes everyone." Storm moved gracefully to the center of the circle, his scales shimmering under the council's lights. One by one, he touched his head to each council member, sharing a direct, personal mental link. Each council member experienced a unique aspect of the Shadow Claw's history, culture, and wisdom. This direct connection left a profound impact on all of them. As Storm completed his round, the council members stood in silent awe. For the first time, they had glimpsed a new kind of wisdom, a path that, though different from their own, was no less valuable. They began to understand that what they faced was not merely another species, but a living philosophy that valued understanding and unity over dominance and division. And in the heart of the Galactic Council, surrounded by humans and Shadow Claws, a bond of peace and mutual respect began to form, a bridge built on shared understanding and trust that would reshape the galaxy for generations to come. Through the group link, Jack could feel the surprise and wonder spreading among the council members as they absorbed the full impact of the Shadow Claw's shared memories and emotions. The council leader, previously so formal and restrained, stood straighter, his face transformed by awe and newfound understanding. "I see now," he murmured, almost to himself. "We've been thinking about this all wrong. These aren't mere diplomatic negotiations. This is a chance to learn from teachers we never knew we had." Swift, the young Shadow Claw Jack had protected on that critical day, brushed softly against Jack's leg, sharing a sense of pride and hope through their link. Swift had witnessed how humans could bridge worlds and, perhaps for the first time, had understood how kindness and connection could truly change hearts. As council members around them broke into excited conversations, brainstorming the possibilities of learning from the Shadow Claws and exchanging ideas with the elders, Jack felt a swell of satisfaction from Storm. This was what his friend had hoped for all along. Not merely peace, but a deeper, mutual understanding that would ripple across the galaxy. It was an evolution brought about not through technology or force, but by the quiet power of minds meeting minds, hearts understanding hearts. And to think, it had all started with a single human who chose to help an injured creature in the snow instead of fearing it. 1 year later, Jack stood on a hilltop overlooking a structure that represented the culmination of that choice, the newly completed Shadow Claw Cultural Center. The building was unlike anything humans typically constructed. Open to the sky, it integrated living trees, flowing streams, and stones that looked like they had always belonged there. It was a bridge between two worlds, designed to embody the Shadow Claw's ideals of connection with nature, even as it served as a place where the galaxy's different species could come together and learn. The air felt alive with a sense of calm and wisdom, a reminder of the balance the Shadow Claws lived by. Storm walked up beside Jack, even more magnificent than the first day they'd met. Now the first official ambassador of the Shadow Claw people, Storm had played an essential role in the center's design, envisioning it as a place where different species could not only learn about each other but about themselves. For Storm and Jack, the cultural center was more than a building. It was a living, breathing step toward a shared future. Hard to believe it all started with a cut leg in the snow, Jack remarked, feeling Storm's amused agreement through their link. It seemed so improbable, yet here they were on the precipice of something remarkable. Below, Jack noticed a small group of young beings from various species, sitting in a circle with Swift and other Shadow Claws who had come of age. The young ones were learning the fundamentals of mental linking, the first step toward understanding the Shadow Claw's way of life and, perhaps, a new approach to communication and empathy. Ambassador Miller came the calm, automated voice of the center's computer through his communicator. The council's annual report is ready. Jack smiled, knowing that the report would reflect the astounding progress of the past year. In that short time, 5 new cultural centers had been established across the galaxy. Each one offered beings from all walks of life the chance to step away from their technology-laden worlds and learn the Shadow Claw's teachings on connection, balance, and a life built on relationships rather than things. Storm shared a mental image with Jack, a memory from their first meeting. Jack saw himself kneeling in the snow, ignoring every rule and protocol to help an injured creature, simply because it was the right thing to do. Through the link, he felt Storm's gratitude and pride. Jack smiled, the memory warming him like the sun on his face. "You knew what you were doing back then, didn't you?" Jack asked. "You were testing me, to see if humans could understand, if we could connect." Storm's response was a feeling of playful agreement mixed with a deep sense of purpose. As Jack now understood, the Shadow Claws had observed humans for many years. They'd watched how humans approached other species, reaching out and helping without always expecting something in return. Jack hadn't been chosen by chance. Just then, a small group of human children ran past, laughing as they chased a young Shadow Claw in a game of tag. None of them showed any fear. To them, the Shadow Claws were simply friends who thought in different ways, offering endless curiosity and new perspectives. It was a heartening sight, a glimpse of a future generation who might grow up seeing no divisions, only the beauty of difference. "Ambassador," the computer voice called again. "The new learning group is ready for their first session." Jack nodded, glancing at Storm. "Tell them we'll be there shortly." This group was going to be special. Diplomats and scientists who had once tried to capture or study Shadow Claws were now coming to learn from them instead. Real, transformative change was happening, one mind at a time, and the Shadow Claws were leading the way. Storm suddenly sent Jack a new image, a powerful vision of the future. Jack saw humans and Shadow Claws working together, their unique perspectives combining to help other species discover a balance between progress and wisdom. The cultural centers would evolve into places of healing, sanctuaries where beings weary of endless technology could reconnect with the essence of life itself. "We've come so far," Jack said softly, as he processed Storm's vision. "But you're saying we're just getting started, aren't we?" Swift, now fully grown, approached, her bearing confident and calm. Once shy and tentative, she had become a teacher in her own right, guiding the youngest visitors and embodying the spirit of a new generation. One that had been born into a world where different species could reach out and truly understand one another. Through their link, Storm shared something momentous, a choice. The Shadow Claws were prepared to offer humans a chance to learn their deepest secrets, the mental techniques they had developed over thousands of years. This knowledge was something they'd guarded carefully, not meant to be wielded as weapons or tools, but to foster growth and connection in ways technology never could. Jack felt a swell of excitement and awe. This was what the Cultural Center was truly about, not only peace between species but a way forward that would allow progress without sacrificing connection, knowledge without losing humility. Jack looked at Storm, realization dawning. "This isn't just about peace," he murmured. "It's about a new path forward. A way to grow without losing what makes life worth living." Storm's response was wordless yet deeply profound. a feeling of standing side by side, different yet united, each species making the other stronger, sharing strengths rather than subduing weaknesses. A cold wind swept across the hilltop, and for a moment, Jack was back at Research Station 47, facing a creature everyone else had feared. He had just wanted to help an injured being, and somehow that simple choice had changed the galaxy. Jack looked toward the cultural center, bustling with life as beings from across the stars gathered to learn, eager to discover the Shadowclaw's gifts and embrace a new kind of wisdom. As he watched, he felt the weight of his journey, the trials, the dangers, and the countless lives that had been touched. "Ready for today's lesson?" he asked Storm, the corners of his mouth lifting in a gentle smile. Storm stood tall beside him, his silver eyes gleaming with wisdom and joy. Together, they walked toward the cultural center, where beings from all corners of the galaxy awaited their guidance. Here, under the open sky, the galaxy's fiercest predators had become its greatest teachers, showing that understanding and connection were the most potent forces in the universe. In a quiet corner of space, Research Station 47 still stood, its fence removed, its doors open to all who chose to learn. A reminder that sometimes, the simplest acts of compassion could spark the greatest transformations, and that, in the end, understanding was the truest power of all. The end.